Olá, queridos ouvintes da Alta Boltagem, tudo bem com vocês? Hoje a introdução não vai ser muito longa, porque estamos diante do episódio mais importante da nossa história, o episódio mais inacreditável da nossa ainda curta história. Não sei se vocês perceberam no início dessa semana, ou se vocês são bons em stalkear, mas rolou uma sondagem para um convidado estrangeiro participar do programa, e ele acabou aceitando o nosso convite. Vocês já conhecem como que funciona aqui, meu nome é Guilherme Bana, para a missão de hoje estou acompanhado pelo Fefe, pelo Igor e pelo Futi. A missão de hoje não é simples, mas é para lá de gratificante, porque sim, ele está entre a gente. O repórter que todos nós amamos está aqui. Se eu não estivesse olhando para ele nesse exato momento, eu também não acreditaria que é verdade. Mas ele está aqui, o Daniel Popper, do The Athletic, é o nosso convidado para a área de especial. Acreditem se quiserem. Como o Popper é americano, esse episódio ele vai estar no formato de podcast, e ele vai ser gravado todo em inglês, no formato de podcast, mas a gente vai estar soltando a versão dele legendada no YouTube também, posteriormente, caso você não se sinta tão confortável no inglês. Eu espero pela compreensão de todos vocês, tenho certeza que vocês vão entender. Mas, sem mais delongas, vamos ao que interessa, vamos para o episódio. Daniel, as we spoke before, we cannot stress enough how happy we are to have you here. It's an honor to us as Brazilian fan accounts to have a guy like you in the show. We appreciate so much your work on The Athletic, and I'm sure I can speak for all of us that we never had a writer like you covering the team the way like you do, doing live streams, doing so much on The Athletic. But first things first, how are you?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here. I didn't understand any part of the introduction, but I'm just going to assume that you said a lot of really nice things about me. That's what I'm going to assume.
It was all good things. Have you ever pictured yourself participating in a Brazilian podcast to talk about your job, about the Chargers?
Yeah, I never envisioned it. But one thing I've realized just from being on Twitter as much as I am and doing these YouTube live streams, the Chargers do really have a global fan base. I think it's something that's pretty unique to this team. And that's why I was so happy to do this, because I really want to lean into that. And it's really, really cool to see the NFL, something that is really, the backbone of American sports, sort of catching on across the globe. I think that's really awesome. And so I'm super, super happy to be here. Super excited to be with you guys to talk some football.
Let's do it. My first question is not necessarily Chargers related, but more of a personal one. Okay. Have you always grown up with that desire to be a reporter, or it's something, especially a sports one, or it's something that grew on you later on?
Yeah. I mean, I've always loved sports. I grew up a big fan of the NFL, grew up in New York around the Giants, Knicks fan, Red Sox fan. I spent all my waking hours either watching sports or reading about sports. And so that's initially why I pursued, this field. I wanted to be around sports. I wanted to be watching them. I wanted to be writing about them. I thought that would be pretty cool to get a bunch of free sports games a year. But as I, went to college and I started learning more about journalism, my passion sort of shifted from sports to journalism, and the importance of having a free press to hold people in power accountable. Like that to me is really important. And so I kind of developed that passion as I got older and started working in the field and went to college and learned about sort of what place in society journalism has, particularly American society. So I think those two things have kind of blended now, and that's sort of how I approach the job. Like I obviously still love sports and I still have that passion, or else I wouldn't be doing this job. But I think part of being a reporter at any level and in any field covering any beat is to, be the voice of the people and to hold people in power accountable. And I feel like you can do that as a sports writer, because there's a lot of fans out there paying hard-earned money to buy jerseys, to go to games, to support the team. And the reporter's job is to hold the decision makers accountable for the decisions they make.
Yeah, sure. Here in Brazil, we have a similar scenario of press. I mean, we have a president that don't like the press so much like you had with Trump. So we really understand the importance of free journalism and all of that. You already mentioned that you covered the Jets and the Jaguars. How was it when you find out that you were going to Los Angeles to cover the Chargers? I mean, it was a team that finished the season before with 12 wins, divisional matchup. How was this moment for you?
Yeah, I love how you have to remind everybody that the team was really good before I showed up, right?
The Popper curse. The Popper curse.
The
We know
Popper
about
curse.
that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons I took the job. Covering the Jets, covering the Jaguars, I'd never had the opportunity to cover a legitimate franchise quarterback. So I think that was really appealing. They had Derwin James coming off a rookie of the year, all-pro rookie season. Didn't win rookie of the year thanks to Darius Leonard, but all-pro rookie season. They had this great defense. It seemed like they had a lot of momentum, and that was obviously one of the things that appealed to me. I was really excited to come cover a playoff team, a Super Bowl contender. Obviously, that didn't come to fruition, but the other part of it was exactly. But the other part of it was, moving to Los Angeles. I had been doing like a long distance relationship with my girlfriend from Jacksonville to New York, and she ended up moving out here with me. So on a personal side, like being in the sunshine all the time, I picked up surfing, all of that stuff. So being in LA.
Really cool.
Glad you mentioned that.
But,
just froze a little bit. Yep.
Oh no, go ahead. I was just going to say that, I think everyone around the team is really hoping for some success here in the near future.
Glad you mentioned that your relationship with your girlfriend. Why we see you having a good time with the guys like Fernando and Gilbert and the other beat writers, having a laugh with each other. How the friendship with these guys helped you out since your move to LA?
Yeah, those guys are great. And that's just kind of the nature of being a beat writer. You end up developing close relationships with the other beat writers because you see them way too much. You're at practice with them every day. You're at the games with them. You're traveling to different cities, and those are the only people you know in those cities. So you're going to grab dinner and doing all of that kind of stuff. But I'm really fortunate to have all those guys. Gilbert, Fernando, Jeff, Joe Reedy, just a really great group of guys. We all help each other out, which isn't necessarily always the case on the beat. Really thankful. And obviously, I'm very privileged to call all those guys my friends.
My last one before the guys ask some questions too. In 2020, we had and still have a pandemic going on. How hard it was to cover an NFL team from home? I mean, the fact you couldn't attend the facilities the whole year, all that restrictions the league were imposing. Do you feel you adapted well working from home? Do you take any bright side from it? How it was?
Well, I feel like I should ask you guys, how do you think I adapted? Because you're the ones that are reading the content, right?
Great.
I mean, it's perfect.
Yeah, of course, it's
Go on, Tut.
No, of course it's different, but great job. Everybody has to adapt some way, and we still got everything. So
yeah. So what I can say is it was challenging. I think a big part of my coverage is being in the stadium and keeping my eyes peeled and having my binoculars out and catching interactions between coaches and players on the sideline. And one example I can point to is in 2019 when Philip Rivers was potentially leaving the Chargers, and they played that game in Kansas City at Arrowhead, and it was potentially his last game in a Chargers uniform. I had my binoculars out and I saw him give his gloves to a Chiefs fan.
This one is one of the best piece you had on the Athletics. I really love that.
I appreciate that. So that's what you miss, right? You're watching the game on TV and you can gather enough football stuff to write a column or write your analysis or whatever, but it's those little moments that you miss that really lead to some of the best stories. So I think that is what I missed, but I really tried to, do as much football analysis as I could because, through NFL Game Pass, I'm sure you and all of your listeners are aware of, you can get access to the all 22 tape. So I really, leaned into that and tried to, write as much football stuff as possible. It was a lot harder to sort of find those human interest angles for the bigger features, the stuff that humanizes the players. I found that a little more challenging. But I hope I don't butcher your name. Penalva, is that how you say it? Am I saying that?
Yeah.
Penalva. Right. Penalva. Like you said, everyone had to adapt in their own fields to try and figure out how the hell we were all going to make it through this. And, I think the one thing I can say is that I'm just happy that I could provide a little bit of an outlet, a little bit of a distraction for Chargers fans out there who are obviously going through a tough time. And I just kept working hard because I knew that anybody that was reading my story could have 5-10 minutes just to take their mind off the madness around the world. And I'm just happy that I was able to do that for people.
We appreciate that, Daniel. Fefe, go on.
Hey, Daniel. I can't stress enough the fact that it is awesome to have you here. Such an honor. Like Bana said, you've probably the best bit writer that we've had in a long time. But I'm gonna start asking you more about football now. My first question.
All right.
Is the following. I mean, in my opinion, it is an understatement saying the Chargers pass rush has struggled the last couple of years, despite having one of the best, if not the best, pass rusher in the NFL in Joey Bosa. On the other hand, Brandon Staley has a knack, in my opinion, as well, for creating opportunities for his players when it comes to doing damage to opposing QBs. We've seen him do that. With the Rams last year. They ranked second in the NFL in sacks. The defensive line, obviously led by Aaron Donald, was great. Sebastian Joseph, they stepped up. So did Morgan Fox. And in that sense, how do you believe the Chargers will perform in this area? I mean, is it the year that guys like Uchenna Nwosu, Jerry Tillery make their jump we expect from? That's my question. I feel like Uchenna Nwosu has always been productive in limited time, but under Gus Bradley, he didn't level up in what we expected from him. Is it the year that he's going to have a career year? Is it the year Jerry Tillery finally makes the cut as a viable NFL player? What's their opinion on that?
Yeah, so I think you sort of have to start with discussing the differences in the schemes between Gus Bradley and Brandon Staley. Gus Bradley didn't necessarily believe in blitzing. His scheme is predicated on his front four getting pressure and dropping back into the cover 3 zone regularly and sort of playing to prevent explosive plays. Now, the scheme works if you have a really, really, really talented front four that can get after the quarterback. The Chargers had that at times. Joey Bosa, like you mentioned, is one of the premier edge rushers in the league. Melvin Ingram has battled injuries the last 2 years. He's obviously gone. Uchenna Nwosu struggled to find consistency, battled with injuries. Justin Jones has had some injuries. So, that's why you didn't really see the production there that maybe, you would have hoped for. Brandon Staley is going to be a more aggressive defensive coordinator. Obviously, he's the head coach, but he's going to be calling plays, so he is the defensive coordinator in that sense. And so you're going to be seeing more blitzes. You're going to be seeing a more aggressive approach to defense. And in that way, they'll probably be able to generate more pass rush, more production in the sack department. I don't know if it's necessarily going to come from the front four, but you'll be seeing Kenneth Murray getting after the quarterback a little bit more. You'll be seeing Derwin James get after the quarterback a little bit more. You'll be seeing more exotic blitzes out of the slot, blitzes from the cornerbacks, blitzes from different safeties, dime backers in certain packages if they go to a dime package. So I think there's a lot to like about the way Brandon Staley is approaching it. And you're going to give yourself more chances to get after the quarterback if you're bringing 5 or more guys more often. And we're going to see more of that this year. Just specifically with Jerry Tillery, the Chargers are really high on this guy. They obviously took him in the first round back in 2019. He hasn't played to the level that I think everyone expected, considering where he was drafted. But he is a really versatile player. That's the one thing to keep in mind. You can really move him all over the defensive line. And we saw that last year when he was playing defensive end when Joey Bosa was out with those concussions. So this is a guy you can really move all over. And the one thing I can add is that Brandon Staley is going to focus on getting these guys one-on-ones against defensive linemen. And one guy, Justin Jones, brought this up the other day. He was, as the 3 technique, was taking on a ton of double teams in Gus Bradley's scheme. He was really a run stuffer, and he wasn't getting those one-on-one matchups to really show off his pass rushing skills. That is the priority for this defensive scheme, is getting these defensive linemen in one-on-one scenarios where they can really show off their moves, their pass rushing moves, their repertoire, their bags of pass rushing moves. And so the short answer to your question is I would expect more production in the sack department just because the scheme is so different and more aggressive than Gus Bradley's scheme.
Yeah, sure. I think that's the thing about Staley's defense, right? I mean, his priority is to implement the creative front, to create pressure from all the ends. Things that that we did not see at all with Gus Bradley. He was so afraid of blitzing, unidimensional, so yeah, that's the thing that really excites me about Staley, how he creates pressure. He obviously Aaron Donald took a lot of double teams, triple teams. I'd expect Joey Bosa to handle that as well. And so with that, the other guys can flash, right? I mean, expect Justin Jones to flash and expect Lieutenant Wilson to flash. Hopefully that will be done. My second question, Daniel, was the following. One of the biggest fears during the process of hiring this new staff was the loss of Pep Hamilton, former QB coach, and even Shane Steichen, former offensive coordinator, because in a certain way, they were responsible for the amazing rookie year that Justin Herbert had, which is why their departures could cause a setback on our franchise quarterback development, right? Based on what you saw until now, how has Justin been adapting to this new offense under Joe Lombardi and Shane Day? Is he progressing? Of course, it's different. It is Justin Herbert never had the continuity that QBs need to level up since college. I mean, he saw back there four different schemes, four different offenses. He went to the NFL, saw a very stagnant offense under Shane Steichen and Anthony Lynn, and now he's in his sixth offense, maybe in 6 years. Truly challenging. But how did he develop? How do you expect him to perform in this new offense?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Justin Herbert has had now 4 different offensive coordinators dating back to his freshman year of college. And so this is somebody that's really smart, and he's used to learning new offenses. This isn't anything new to him. Now, with that being said, like, changing offensive coordinators every year is never a good thing for a quarterback. But if there is a young quarterback who's going to be able to handle a situation like that, it's Justin Herbert, because he did it year after year after year when he was in college. In terms of his development, we have to wait to see the product on the field, right? Like, we can make all of these, determinations off of training camp practices and think that we got it all solved, but it doesn't really matter until real games are played. So we'll see. But the one thing that I really have taken away from training camp and from the spring and from, Brandon Staley transitioning into his role is, Brandon Staley was a quarterback in college. Yep. So he eventually became a defensive coach and obviously came up under Vic Fangio, and we all know that story. But he really looks at defense through a quarterback's eyes. That's how he schemes. That's how he thinks about defense. And it really is a unique approach to coaching defense. And so he's going to be able to impart that knowledge onto Justin Herbert. He's going to be able to teach Justin Herbert a lot about defenses. And that's really important. Like, you need to know your own scheme. You need to be comfortable in your own scheme. You need to be a master of the playbook. But you also need to understand what opposing defenses are doing to you. That is half the battle, if not more, for quarterbacks in the NFL. So having this brilliant defensive mind who thinks about the game as a quarterback and schemes up defenses better than anybody in the league, teaching your quarterback, okay, this is what you need to be looking for, I think that's going to be immensely valuable. So if we do see Justin Herbert take the next step this year, and if he's playing really well, obviously the offensive staff deserves a lot of credit. But I think Brandon Staley taking that approach of teaching Herbert about these defenses and about what he should be looking for, I think that's also going to be a huge part of his development.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely. I mean, Brandon Staley was my favorite guy on the hiring process. The other guys know about it. And that's the main thing about him. He has overall command. I think I didn't see with Anthony Lynn at all. I mean, the guy didn't have command at all of the offense, of the defensive operations, and as much as the NFL works with hiring the next great offensive mind as a head coach. That's the main fear of hiring a defensive-minded coach. I think, as you said, Brandon Staley was a quarterback in high school. Mm-hmm. Then he understands how the offense operates. So in the last, Joe Lombardi is gone. I mean, hopefully the offense will not will continue to develop, under him.
Yeah.
Because the system is developed by him, not by Joe Lombardi. That's my take away from the Brandon Staley hire. Super excited. Thank you, man.
Sure.
Fuch, go on.
Okay, Daniel, I'm gonna go more to the training camp now. Reading your daily reports about the training, seems like the first team is getting the best of the first team offense. Is that right, or I'm reading too much between the lines here? Are there any causes of concern with the offense right now, or is everything great?
Yeah, so it's not abnormal this time of year for the defense to be ahead of the offense. You see it pretty much at every training camp you go to. That's pretty much a regular thing. The offense has hit some big plays. Like, the defense, I think, overall is getting the best of them, but it's not big plays. I mean, Justin Herbert coached for 55-yard touchdown early on in training camp. So they're he hit Keenan Allen for a 40-yard gain a couple days ago. So they're getting some big plays in there. They're making some big plays. So I wouldn't say that the defense is dominating. They're ahead of the offense right now, but that's pretty regular. The other thing I would add is the offense has a lot of new pieces. You have 4 new starters on the offensive line. You have a new starting tight end. And all of this, you're trying to, implement a new offensive scheme as well. So that matters. It takes time for players to mesh together, especially for players to mesh together on the offensive line. And that's something that has to be considered when you're sort of assessing, okay, where's the defense at? Where's the offense at? I know the defense is also implementing a new scheme that's very complex, but the pieces are more or less the same. Like, all these guys played together last season, except for Kyler Fackrell, basically. And he's been sort of, trading off with Uchenna Nwosu for that, edge rusher spot opposite Joey Bosa. But otherwise, it's all intact. Michael Davis, Chris Harris, Derwin, Nas Adderley, Justin Jones, Jerry Tillery, Linval Joseph, Joey Bosa, Kenneth Murray, Drew Tranquil. Like, all these guys were there last year. So there is familiarity in terms of how to communicate with each other. And I think that's also a factor, just the new pieces on offense versus sort of the continuity roster-wise on defense.
Yeah, it's good that you brought up about the Dolphins, because I'm going to ask you about the wide receiver battle for the final spot. Like, right now, it seems like Palmer has emerged as the number 3 guy with Tyron Johnson right behind him. Who do you think has the hot seat right now?
Yeah, so, Tyron Johnson has made some big plays, but, Josh Palmer looks the part, right? And he, after a player is drafted, the front office and the coaching staff is always going to be like, this guy's going to be a star. This is like, we're so happy we got him here. They're never going to say that they made a bad pick, right?
Yeah.
But the things they said about Josh Palmer, it's a very precise route runner. He's a professional. He's got a big body, strong arms, strong hands, like all of these things that they were talking about, all of the characteristics, all of the parts of his skill set. Like, you're starting to see that on the field, right? So he's making contested catches with those strong hands. He's running fantastic routes and coming open. So I think he's a really excellent piece. But I think as you move into the season, there's going to be so many different formations, so many different personnel groupings with this offense that it's just going to depend on what kind of matchup they want, right? And it's good because they have different receivers that do different things. So if you want speed on the field with that third wide receiver, you bring in Tyron Johnson, who runs a 4.35 and is an excellent deep threat. If you want a guy that's bigger, that maybe can cause a mismatch against a smaller nickel corner, or a guy that you want to go up and make a contested catch in the red zone, something like that, or a guy that you feel like can run after the catch and break some tackles in the middle of the field, then you go with Josh Palmer. So then you look at the different skill sets of it, and I don't think it's going to be like last year where Jalen Guyton emerged as that third wide receiver and was the guy on the field every single time they went to 11 personnel. I think you're going to see a lot more mixing and matching depending on what exactly the offense is trying to accomplish. But I've been thoroughly impressed with Josh Palmer, and he's been one of my standout guys at camp so far.
Yeah. Just to finish, after this week of training camp, who are your dark horse to make the final roster, and who do you think can be the surprise cut right here?
Good question. I think Emeka Egbule is trending towards making the roster right now. My initial 53-man projection, I had him out. I had them keeping 4 edge rushers, Fackrell, Nwosu, Bosa, and then the rookie Chris Rumph. But I could see them now keeping 5 edge rushers because Emeka Egbule is playing at a high level right now. He had a red zone series in Wednesday's practice, I should say, yesterday, where he, wrecked an entire red zone series all by himself. He had a sack and a batted down pass at the line of scrimmage. I've been really impressed with what he's doing. And he's also a guy that could be a core 4 special teams guy, right? Kickoff, kick return, punt, and punt return. He has that capability. He has some experience doing that. The Chargers weren't able to get the most out of him in that area, but you've got a better special teams coach in place now in Darius Swinton. So he's my dark horse right now. The other guy to watch is Cole Christensen, inside linebacker. And also Amen, and I'm going to totally botch his name, but Agbang Bemida. He was an undrafted free agent inside linebacker. I think those two guys will be battling for a spot.
He has a great story of life.
Yeah, he does. Our Tashawn Reed at The Athletic actually wrote a great feature on him, if anyone hasn't checked that out. So those two guys also be battling. But the one thing to remember when you're sort of seeing, okay, who's going to get cut, who's going to make the roster, the spots like 47 to 53 on the roster, it's all about special teams. What can you do on special teams? How committed are you to that unit? And how productive are you with that unit? And that's really what's going to make the difference.
Igor.
Here's the first team unit, and it's not. I don't know if anyone really cares about it, but the reason I keep putting that in there is because that's what's ultimately going to decide the roster. In terms of surprise cuts, I don't know if I'm there yet, but I think that whether they keep 4 running backs or 3 running backs, that's where you're potentially going to get a surprise cut. Yeah. I'm leaning towards them keeping 4 running backs. But if they don't, I think Justin Jackson potentially could be a surprise cut. The other guy I would say is, I don't know if there's a huge surprise cut, but I could totally see them only keeping 2 quarterbacks and cutting Easton Stick. It's pretty clear at this point that Chase Daniel is the number 2 quarterback. I've been writing that all offseason. It makes sense. He understands the offense. He's got a ton of experience as a backup in the league. He's a great resource for Justin Herbert. And I haven't seen the kind of steps forward from Easton Stick that would really be necessary for him to claim a roster spot. And I think if they want to keep, 2 of those guys I was talking about before, if they want to keep Agbule and Cole Christensen, or Agbule and Amen, I'm going to call him because I'm not going to say his last name again. If they want to keep 2 of those guys, then you're going to have to find a roster spot somewhere. And maybe they go with 2 quarterbacks and they cut Easton Stick.
Why you had Kelly over Justin Jackson? It's because salary? It's because Jackson health? Why you had Kelly?
Is it because Kelly just was drafted in the 4th round last year?
It's a number of things. Availability is really important, especially at that position. And Justin Jackson has only played 16 games over the last 2 seasons. I think that's a concern. And then, Larry Roundtree is a draft pick of this coaching regime. That matters. Like when a new coaching staff comes in and they make their draft picks, they're trying to turn over the roster to get guys they like and the skill sets they like. Justin Jackson was a previous coaching regime, and Josh Kelly was too. But, you talk about a 4th round pick. He's only been in the league 1 year. Very rare you would see a player like that cut, especially a talented player like Josh Kelly. So that's really the calculus in my head. And then also you bring up the salary. If they cut Justin Jackson, they wouldn't have any dead money. They'd save over $2 million in cap space without anything affecting in terms of dead money. So I think all those are factors. But right now, I think he makes the team. And I would actually say the surprise cut is Easton Stick. But that's just a position group to monitor because I'm not 100% confident they're going to keep 4 running backs in my final roster.
What about Joe Reed? Is he going to be cut, in your opinion?
Joe Reed, it's tough. He's going to have to make a real impact on special teams in the preseason games. He's going to have to show up there not just as a returner. I'm talking about as potentially a gunner. I'm talking about as a punt cover guy. He's going to have to show up and be a difference maker in special teams to make the team. He's made a few plays in practice. But they drafted a receiver, obviously, in Josh Palmer. Jalen Guyton is just a more talented receiver at this stage. So that's 5 already, right? And so do they keep 6? Who's that 6th guy? If they go to 6, is it KJ Hill? Is it Austin Proehl? Is it Joe Reed? I've really loved what I've seen from Austin Proehl. I don't think he's necessarily going to crack the roster, but that's a heated battle right now. And Joe Reed has a lot to prove on special teams in these preseason games coming up to really claim his roster spot, I would say.
Igor, as time flies up, finish this show.
I'm going to ask you only one question because of the time, and it's a question about culture. I do understand that the team's culture is the base of anything in any level of football, minor leagues, college, even here in Brazil with Alta football. The team's culture is the base. It's the base where you can see your team going is when the players hold each other accountable, when players jump each other up. How do you see the team's culture under Staley? There any difference between the previous staff, how the players are reacting to it, how the players are see the team going under this new regime?
Yeah, let me start with the previous regime's culture, because I don't think they really had a culture issue. Like, Anthony Lynn was a great leader. The players really related to him because he was a former player himself, a Super Bowl winner. Like, he is regarded as one of the nicest guys in the NFL, and from my experiences with him, I can support that. So I don't necessarily think they had a culture issue. I think he didn't have the right guys in place underneath him to create the type of execution that he needed. Keeping George Stewart around as long as he did as a special teams coordinator, I think it was a mistake. And I think he sort of put to coaches interest over like the best guy he could to run his units. In terms of the culture now, though, what I can say is this is a relationship-oriented organization now. Brandon Staley said in his intro press conference that he's learned more from the players he's coached than his players have learned from him. That you don't hear that very often in the NFL, because coaches in the NFL generally have pretty big egos and they think they're big deals and that they're bringing a lot to the table. And a lot of them are, but it takes a humble man to admit, listen, I learned more from Khalil Mack and Von Miller and Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey than they. I think that is pretty impressive to say that. And so he's bringing that, what he said in his intro press conference, he's bringing that to the field. And so you see it everywhere in terms of, him talking to players, coaching with players. He's listening as much as he's teaching, and I think that's really important. The other thing I will say, and this ties into culture too, like, this is a really detail-oriented guy in Brandon Staley. Like, there is nothing that I can ask him in a press conference that he hasn't already thought about for hours and hours on end. Like, everything. And everything about what he does is with intention. So even down to how he structures the practice, even down to an 11-on-11 drills, whether he has, he doesn't have coaches on the field, and that's by intention, and that's by design, because he wants his players to solve their own problems on the field. Cool. When they made this hire, they said that they were looking for innovation, right? Innovation is the word that Dean Spanos, the owner, used in his statement. And that's what Brandon Staley is bringing to the table, because he's so smart, so precise, so detail-oriented that he sort of is creating this innovation just through his processes and through how he approaches being a football coach.
You are loving this new regime, aren't you?
What'd you say?
Yeah, you are loving this regime. Brandon Staley's press conference, all of this stuff. Yeah, I can imagine that. The fans are really excited to see a guy like that, the organization. Because you listen to one press conference and you're like, this guy is really smart. That's what you come away like, okay, this guy. You just need 5 minutes,
and you want your head football coach.
You just need 5
you want your head football coach to be that guy, to be. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't take long. It doesn't take long at all for you to realize that. Yeah.
So, Daniel, as time goes, to wrap things up, what can you expect from you for the next days on the Athletic?
Yeah. So, if you haven't checked it out already, I wrote a long form feature on Rashawn Slater, the first round pick. I talked to his dad, his brother. I talked to his trainers from high school. I talked to a bunch of guys he played against and trained with in high school. If you want to know how Rashawn Slater got to this point, you want to read this story. I promise you, I have so much detail in there. I worked on it for months. So definitely go check that out. And then every day, every practice, I have super detailed training camp reports with every single piece of information that you could possibly want to know about this team. I'm sure all you guys on the podcast here can attest to that. Go theathletic.com/team/Chargers. All my content's up there. And if you don't subscribe, please, I would really appreciate it.
We always sharing your posts and your reports. We really love your work, Daniel. So we appreciate so much your time with us. Hope you like as well. Like I said in the beginning, thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for coming here. It was privileged to have you here. Sorry if there were any miscommunication during the show, but I think we managed them well. Anytime you come to Brazil, give us a heads up, and we get you.
Definitely, yeah.
Awesome, guys. Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Let's do this again soon.
Thank you for your time.
Sure. Thank you.
Have a good one.